It was a quiet Saturday morning when he stepped outside his townhouse with a cup of tea in his hand, hoping to enjoy a few peaceful minutes on the porch. He had moved into the neighborhood just a week earlier, still adjusting to the area and trying to settle into a routine. The sun was warm, the breeze was soft, and for the first time in days, he felt like he could finally relax. But that peaceful moment didn't last long. He heard hurried footsteps, sharp, fast, and full of purpose. Before he could even look up, a woman marched toward his porch like she owned the whole street. She had a stiff posture, a tight frown, and a clipboard clutched to her chest as if she were conducting an inspection. He didn't know her name yet. Everyone in the neighborhood would later whisper it the same way. Karen. She didn't greet him or smile. She didn't even introduce herself. She simply stopped at the first step of his porch and pointed her pen at him. "You can't leave your trash bin there," she snapped. "That's an HOA violation. And the way you parked your car last night? Completely unacceptable. Also, these plants," she motioned toward 2 small pots he had placed near the railing. "Not approved. You can't just bring anything you want into a community like this." He blinked, unsure if she was serious or joking. He had barely lived there long enough to unpack his suitcase. How could he already be breaking rules he hadn't even heard about? He gently set his cup down and faced her, doing his best to stay calm. "Oh," he said slowly. "I didn't know about that. I wasn't told anything when I moved in. Are these actual rules?" She scoffed like his question offended her. "Of course, they're rules. This neighborhood has standards, and you're already lowering them. I'm letting you off with a warning today, but I better not see this again. And trust me, if you continue breaking rules, I'll be reporting you to your landlord." He nodded politely. "No problem. If you have a list of official rules, I'm happy to follow them. Could you show me where they're written?" Her expression hardened. It was clear she wasn't used to someone asking for proof. "You don't need to see them," she snapped. "I know them." She tapped her clipboard proudly, as if it held the laws of the land. "Just do what I said. That's all you need to worry about." Before he could say another word, she spun around and marched down the sidewalk. Muttering under her breath about new people ruining everything, he watched her go, baffled by the whole interaction. He wasn't angry, just confused. He had never lived in a neighborhood with an HOA before, but he assumed there would be official guidelines. Not just a stranger with a clipboard barking orders. He took a deep breath and went back inside, deciding not to let the encounter ruin his morning. But even as he tried to let it go, he couldn't stop wondering, was she really allowed to talk to people like that? And why did she act like she ran the place? Later that day, he noticed that a few neighbors seemed to avoid eye contact with her as she walked around checking yards, peeking into driveways, and taking notes on her clipboard like she was on a mission. Some neighbors hurried indoors when they saw her coming. Others stayed silent, giving him sympathetic looks, as if to say, "Good luck, you're going to need it." One older man from across the street gave him a slow shake of his head and mouthed, "She does this to everyone." But the man didn't approach or say more. It was the kind of warning delivered by someone who had learned the hard way not to get involved. He had tried not to think too much about it, but the situation lingered in his mind. He wanted to understand what he had done wrong, if anything. That night, he sat down at his desk and looked through his rental documents again. Nothing mentioned trash bin locations. Nothing mentioned specific plants. Nothing said anything about parking being an issue unless he blocked someone's driveway, which he hadn't. He sighed. "Maybe she just wants things a certain way," he muttered to himself. "Maybe this is how the neighborhood works." But something inside him felt off. Her reaction had been too aggressive, too personal. It didn't feel like she was enforcing rules. It felt like she was trying to control him. He made a mental note to call the HOA directly the next day, just for clarity. He wasn't planning on fighting anyone. He just wanted to understand the truth. The next morning came with yet another unexpected encounter. He stepped outside again, this time wary, scanning the street for any sign of Karen. For a moment, all seemed calm. Birds chirped. Cars hummed softly at a distance. He relaxed slightly. Then he heard the same sharp footsteps. She was back. This time she didn't even pretend to hide her irritation. She marched straight toward him with the same clipboard, the same pen. But an even deeper frown. "You didn't move your trash bin far enough," she complained, before he could even greet her. "I told you yesterday. And your car is still slightly crooked. I measured it this morning." He stared at her. "You measured it?" "Yes," she said proudly. "Also, I noticed you placed your welcome mat a bit over the approved boundary line. That's another violation. I'm writing it all down." He took a slow breath. "Ma'am, I haven't received any official rules. I asked if you could show them to me." She waved her hand dismissively. "I don't need to show you anything. I've been part of this community longer than you've been here. I know every rule by heart. And if you continue questioning me, I'll take action. I can contact your landlord today. Test me." For a moment he considered telling her everything who he really was, what role he actually played regarding the property, but he stopped himself. Not yet. There was no reason to start a conflict, so instead he simply nodded. "Okay. If you need to talk to the landlord, feel free." She smirked, thinking she had intimidated him. "Good. I'll be filing a report." And with that, she walked away once again, her clipboard tucked under her arm like a badge of authority. He stood there quietly, watching her go, and this time he couldn't help but let out a small laugh. Not a laugh of amusement, but disbelief. She had no idea who she was talking to. No idea that the person she kept threatening to report was the very person she had no power over. But he wasn't going to reveal anything yet. He wanted to do things the right way, clearly, and with proper information. That meant calling the HOA, checking the rules, and seeing what was actually true. Still, something told him this situation was only going to get more interesting. And he wasn't wrong, because Karen wasn't done with him. Not even close. And soon. She was going to find out exactly who she had been trying to boss around. The next morning, he woke up with the same uneasy feeling he had gone to bed with. Karen's constant accusations replayed in his mind, not because her words had any real weight, but because they made no sense. Every complaint had felt like it came out of thin air. Something inside him kept whispering that what she said didn't match how things should work in a normal neighborhood. After making a simple breakfast, he sat at a small dining table with his laptop and a notebook. He decided it was time to get proper answers. He wasn't angry, he wasn't even frustrated yet, he just wanted clarity. If there really were rules, he would follow them. But he needed to hear them from the actual source, not someone acting like a one-person city council. He searched for the contact number of the HOA. On a welcome packet he found tucked inside a kitchen drawer. The packet didn't list any rules, but it did have a phone number for general inquiries. He took a moment before dialing, making sure he was calm and ready. The call connected after a few rings. "Good morning, community office," a friendly voice answered. He cleared his throat. "Hi, I just moved into the neighborhood last week. I had some questions about HOA rules, of course. How can I help?" He explained everything quickly, but clearly how a woman had approached him twice, accused him of breaking several rules, and claimed she would report him to his landlord. There was a small silence on the line. Finally, the representative asked, "Can I ask who spoke to you?" He described her, the clipboard, the stern expression, the way she acted like she personally wrote the rulebook. He didn't need to say her name. The representative sighed softly. "Oh, her," she muttered under her breath. That alone told him everything. "Is this normal?" he asked. "Well," the representative said carefully, "that particular resident has a history of giving out unofficial warnings. She's not part of the HOA board. She's not authorized to enforce anything. She does take it upon herself to monitor people, but none of the things she told you are actual violations." He felt a mix of relief and amusement. "So the trash bin? The plants? The parking? All fine," she replied. "There are no rules against any of those things." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Thank you. I just wanted to confirm." "If she continues bothering you," the representative continued gently, "you're welcome to file a complaint with us. You wouldn't be the first." He hesitated. "Does she do this often?" "You'd be surprised," she said with a tired laugh. We've warned her before about interrupting residents and pretending to act on behalf of the HOA, but she always finds a way to involve herself again. He rubbed the side of his face, not sure if he should laugh or shake his head. Part of him felt bad for her maybe. She just wanted control in a place where she didn't have much. But another part of him thought it was unfair for her to disturb others under false authority. After thanking the representative again, he hung up, feeling a bit lighter. Now he knew the truth. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't breaking any rules. And most importantly, Karen had absolutely no power over him, but the day wasn't over. He decided to step outside for some fresh air, hoping to clear his head. He walked around the block slowly, observing the neighborhood with new eyes. Kids played on their bikes, a couple gardened near their porch, and a few neighbors nodded politely as he passed. One woman watering her plants gave him a sympathetic smile. "I heard she came by yesterday," she said quietly. He gave a short nod. "She did. Twice." "Don't worry," the woman said, lowering her voice. "She thinks she's in charge. Has been like that for years. Just keep your distance, and you'll be fine." He thanked her, appreciating the reassurance. She didn't gossip or mock Karen. She simply warned him kindly, as if she'd seen the same pattern over and over. When he returned home, he thought he finally had a calm moment. But just as he was about to unlock his door, he heard a voice behind him. "There you are. I need to talk to you again." He froze for a second. No mistake, Karen. Her steps were sharp and fast, like she had been waiting for him to return. She marched straight to him, her clipboard tucked under her arm, her lips pulled into a thin line. Before he could open his mouth, she began, "I don't appreciate you ignoring my warnings. I saw that your trash bin was still in the same place this morning, and your car still not fixed. On top of that, I saw you talking to people in the neighborhood. If you're trying to get support against me, it's not going to work." He slowly turned to face her. "I wasn't trying to get support. I just went for a walk." "While you were walking," she snapped, "I filed a report about you. You're making this difficult." Couldn't help the small laugh that escaped him, more out of disbelief than humor. "A report? To who?" "To your landlord," she said proudly. "I have their number, and they deserve to know what kind of tenant you are. I expect they'll want to schedule a talk with you soon." A calm silence stretched between them. He could have told her right then. He could have ended the entire thing with one simple sentence. "I'm the landlord." But he didn't. Not because he was scared or unsure, but because he wanted to handle things the right way. He wanted everything documented. He wanted to fully understand how far she would push this game. She thought she was winning. Revealing the truth right now would only make her defensive, or worse, more dramatic. So he kept his expression steady. "All right," he said quietly. "If you think it's necessary, go ahead." Her eyebrows lifted, surprised that he wasn't panicking. Maybe she expected him to beg or apologize. Instead, he gave her nothing. "Well," she said with an irritated huff, "don't say I didn't warn you. I'll be sending a follow-up report this evening." She turned and walked away, taking slow, dramatic steps like she believed she had just delivered the final blow. The moment she was gone, he let out a long breath. This was becoming more complicated than he expected. But he wasn't upset. If anything, he almost felt curious. What would she do next? How far would she take this? Later that evening, he received a notification on his phone from the property management portal. He opened it and saw exactly what he expected. A message stating that a resident had complained about him, but the message wasn't about a rule violation. It was simply an inquiry from the office asking, "Do you know why this person is contacting us about you?" He smiled. Not only did the office know he was the property owner, they seemed confused why a tenant was trying to report their landlord. He replied politely, explaining the situation in detail. He didn't insult Karen. He didn't exaggerate. He described everything factually: her visits, her accusations, her threats, and her claim that she had filed reports. Within an hour, the office responded again. "Thank you for the information. We will take care of it. You are not at fault. We appreciate your patience." Closed his phone, feeling a quiet sense of reassurance. The people who actually had authority understood the situation immediately. The next day, He took another walk around the neighborhood. More residents seemed comfortable greeting him now. Perhaps word traveled fast, or maybe people simply sensed he wasn't someone who would enable unnecessary drama near the end of his walk. An older man from across the street approached him slowly. "You handled her well," the man said with a small nod. He replied, "She oversteps," the man continued. "Always has. But she never learns unless someone stands up to her." He gave a gentle smile. "I'm not trying to fight her. I just want things to stay peaceful." "Sometimes peace comes after someone draws a line," the man said. That sentence stayed with him. Later that afternoon, as he sat on his porch, he saw Karen again. She wasn't marching or inspecting anything this time. She stood at the end of the sidewalk, staring at her phone with a stiff expression. He wondered if the property office had already contacted her. She didn't come over, though. Not yet. He sipped his drink quietly, waiting. Something told him this chapter wasn't over. This was only the calm before the next storm, and soon Karen would push things much further, but she still had no idea who she was dealing with. The next morning started quietly, almost too quietly. He stepped outside with a cup of warm tea in his hands, hoping for a peaceful moment before the day fully began. The sun was just rising, painting everything in soft gold. For a few seconds it felt like maybe, just maybe, the whole situation with Karen was ending. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. People like her didn't just stop. He sat on his porch chair and watched the street. A few neighbors waved politely and he smiled back. He thought about the message he received from the property office the night before. They clearly understood the situation and promised to handle things. He trusted them. That alone made him feel more relaxed. But as he took another sip of his tea, he heard the sound he had begun to recognize too well: quick steps, sharp and impatient. The kind of footsteps that came with a purpose. He didn't even need to turn around. He already knew who it was. Within seconds, Karen appeared, walking straight toward him like she had been rehearsing her speech all night. She wasn't holding her usual clipboard this time. Instead, she had a stack of loose papers in her hand. Her expression was tense, her jaw tight, and her eyes filled with the same determination she carried whenever she believed she had power. "Good," she said as soon as she reached his porch. "You're awake. We need to talk." He stayed calm. "About what?" She lifted the stack of papers. "Your behavior and your violations. These are the reports I've been working on. I'm submitting them to the landlord today." He blinked slowly. She wasn't joking. She had written paragraphs, full pages about him. It was almost unbelievable. He didn't reach for the papers. He simply looked at her. "I already spoke to the property office," he said quietly. Her face twitched. "I know. They called me last night." He could see the irritation in her eyes. It looked like she hadn't gotten the reaction she'd hoped for. "So," he asked carefully, "did they tell you anything?" Her lips tightened. "They told me to stop contacting them directly. They said they'd handle things internally, but they didn't tell me anything useful. And honestly, they don't understand how serious this is. You're disrupting the harmony of this neighborhood." He almost laughed at the irony. She was the one disrupting the harmony. But he didn't say that. Instead, he replied softly, "I'm not breaking any rules." She snapped. "The trash bin, the car, the plants, the welcome mat. Everything I've told you. You're ignoring all of it." He took a slow breath. "I spoke with the HOA too." It stopped her. Her eyes narrowed. "You did what?" "They said none of those things are violations. They also said you're not part of the enforcement team." For a moment, Karen went silent. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She wasn't expecting that. It was like he had taken away the only weapon she thought she had. Then, almost immediately, she recovered. "They're wrong," she insisted. "They don't know the rules the way I do. I've lived here for years. I know what keeps this community running. I'm the only one willing to do what's necessary." He realized then that logic wasn't going to work with her, not yet. She believed she had authority. Even when she didn't, she believed her opinion was more important than the actual rules. He stood up slowly. "I respect that you care about the community," he said calmly. But please stop accusing me of things I'm not doing. She stepped closer to close. I will stop when you follow the rules. And if you won't listen to me, I'll make sure your landlord forces you to. He kept his voice steady. You already contacted them, remember? She hesitated again. Another crack in her confidence, he continued, and they're aware of everything. So there's nothing else for me to discuss. Karen's expression hardened, like she had just been challenged. Oh, you think you're clever? She hissed. But trust me, I'm not done with you. You don't understand how things work here. One tenant with an attitude can ruin the entire neighborhood. I won't let that happen. He sighed gently. I don't want trouble with you, but please stop coming to my house with accusations. She wasn't backing down. Instead, she leaned closer. I'll be back tomorrow morning. And if your car, your trash bin, and your plants are not in perfect compliance, I'll escalate this. I'll make sure you regret ignoring me. He lifted his eyebrows slightly. Escalate to who? She didn't answer. She simply spun around and stormed off down the sidewalk, her papers flapping wildly in the wind. Even after she disappeared behind a row of houses, the tension she left behind lingered in the air. He sat back down, feeling both tired and amused. It was almost unbelievable how far she was willing to go, and yet he knew this wasn't the end. Later that afternoon, he decided he needed fresh air again. He walked around the neighborhood slowly, passing familiar houses and familiar people. A few residents nodded at him with polite sympathy, like they knew what he was dealing with. He approached the older man from the day before. The man sat in a lawn chair under the shade of a tree. She talked to you again, didn't she? The man asked without looking up. He smiled weakly. How did you know? She always does, the man replied. You're new. That makes you an easy target for her. He sat down on the edge of the sidewalk near the man. Why does she act this way? The man shrugged. Some people like control. Some people need it. And when they don't have it officially, they create their own version of it. He nodded slowly. It made sense. But listen, the man continued, don't take it personally. She does it to everyone. You're just getting your turn. What did she do to you? He asked. Oh, the old man chuckled dryly. She once tried to tell me the color of my mailbox wasn't approved. I told her it's been the same color for 20 years. She insisted it was suddenly out of compliance. I ignored her. And then what happened? Nothing, the man said. Because she doesn't actually have authority. He thanked the man for the advice. And they talked for a few minutes about normal things, whether gardening, and how the neighborhood used to be quieter when he returned home. He half expected Karen to be lurking somewhere, waiting to deliver another lecture. But she wasn't around, and that worried him in a strange way. When someone like her went quiet, it usually meant they were planning something. He wasn't wrong. A few hours later, as the sun began to set, he noticed someone standing across the street. It was Karen. She wasn't walking around or checking anything. She stood still, staring directly at his house. Not angrily, not suspiciously, just calculating. He didn't move. He simply looked at her. After a moment, she turned and walked away slowly. Not storming off like before, just walking. Like she was thinking deeply. He had a feeling she was preparing her next big move. And he was right that night. He received another notification from the property office. Another complaint had been filed against him. This one was longer than before, filled with exaggerated details, filled with accusations that weren't even possible. He knew immediately. It was her. He sighed and replied politely again, explaining that none of it was true. The office responded quickly, assuring him they understood the situation and reminding him that he wasn't the one in trouble still. It wasn't comfortable. No one likes being accused unfairly. He tried to relax, but he could feel the tension building again. Karen wasn't letting go. Tomorrow would surely bring something new. The next morning proved him right. He stepped outside, and before he even fully closed the door behind him, he heard her voice. Good, she said loudly, as if announcing something. I was waiting for you. She walked toward him at her usual fast pace, clipboard back in her hand, eyes full of fire. What now? he asked calmly. "We need to do a full inspection," she said firmly. "A full check of everything you're doing wrong. If you're going to stay here, you're going to learn how this community works." He stared at her for a moment, wondering if she even heard how unreasonable she sounded. He spoke softly. "You don't have the authority to inspect anything here." She stiffened. "I do what needs to be done." "No," he said gently. "You do what you think needs to be done." Her face flushed with irritation. "I will not let you ruin this neighborhood. If I have to keep reporting you every day, I will." He took a breath. "Karen, you need to stop this." "I will stop," she said, lifting her chin proudly, "when you are gone from this community." He raised an eyebrow. "Gone? Yes," she said with certainty. "Tenants like you come and go. I'm doing everyone a favor." He looked at her quietly for a moment. There it was, her real intention. She didn't want him to follow rules. She wanted him gone. It wasn't about the trash bin. It wasn't about parking. It wasn't about plants. It was about her wanting control, and she thought pushing him out was the way to get it. She had no idea how wrong she was, and soon the truth would hit her harder than any warning she had ever tried to give. The next morning arrived with a strange mix of tension and calm in the air, as if the whole neighborhood was waiting to see what would happen next. The sun came up slowly, spreading a soft golden light across the houses, the lawns, and the quiet street. Everything looked peaceful, almost too peaceful, considering the mess that had unfolded the previous day. The owner stepped outside with a cup of tea in hand, trying to start the morning on a calm note. Even though he knew the situation with the neighbor was far from over, he stood there for a moment, listening to the distant sound of a dog barking and the faint rustle of leaves moving in the breeze. It was a nice moment, but it didn't last long. A familiar voice cut through the morning air. It was sharp, irritated, and full of the same energy that had led to the argument the day before. "We need to talk," the neighbor said. He turned slowly, not surprised, and found her marching toward him again, her face tight with frustration. She didn't look angry like yesterday today. She looked determined, almost like someone who had spent the whole night planning her next move. He kept his voice calm. "Good morning, what now?" She took a deep breath as if preparing for a speech. "I spoke to the HOA president last night. I told them everything. And I'm pretty sure you're in trouble now. They're coming this afternoon to look at your yard, so you might want to get ready for that." He took a slow sip of tea. "That so?" She nodded firmly. "Yes, I told them you've been ignoring rules. The fence color, the lights, the security camera, even the parking situation. They said they'd take complaints seriously, so don't act surprised later." Didn't respond right away. Instead, he took another sip, enjoying the tea, as if nothing about the situation bothered him. She didn't like that. He could tell by the way she crossed her arms. "You really think you can just do whatever you want here?" She continued. "This community has rules for a reason. Some of us care about how things look. Some of us want a peaceful neighborhood. You clearly don't understand that." He raised an eyebrow. "Peaceful? Yesterday you yelled at me in my driveway?" She ignored that. "Anyway, the HOA will handle it. You'll see." He felt a small smile forming, the kind that came from knowing something the other person didn't. He wasn't being cocky. He just knew how things actually worked, something she hadn't bothered to check before marching around making threats. "All right," he said simply. "I'll be here. Let me know when they arrive." She seemed confused by how calm he was. She probably expected him to panic, defend himself, or argue, but he didn't, and that bothered her even more. She narrowed her eyes. "You won't be so calm when they show up. Trust me." And with that, she turned and walked back toward her house, her steps quick and sharp. She didn't look back, probably because she didn't want to see him unberayed. He finished his tea, then went inside. There was no need to stress. He knew the HOA board well, very well, better than she ever imagined. They knew who he was, what his role truly was, and why the usual rules didn't apply the same way as she thought. The afternoon rolled around slowly. He spent some time inside, cleaned the kitchen, made a little breakfast, and looked over some paperwork. By noon, He heard the sound of a car pulling up outside the neighborhood gate. The sound was followed by quiet footsteps walking up the driveway. Then 3 gentle knocks. He opened the door and found 2 HOA board members standing there, holding clipboards and politely smiling. "Good afternoon," one of them said. "We got a report from one of your tenants. She said there were some issues we needed to address." He almost laughed. Tenants, that was the funny part. But he didn't correct them yet. "Come on in, or we can walk around the yard first," he said. They chose to walk the yard. They stepped out onto the driveway and began looking around, noting things, checking the fence, the lighting, and the small garden boxes. They didn't seem concerned at all. In fact, their tone was casual, comfortable, respectful. It didn't take long before the neighbor spotted them. She came briskly across her yard, eyes wide like she had been waiting for this moment. "There you are," she said to the board members. "Thank you for coming. See, look at the lights. Look at the fence. And the camera points right toward my house. He's been breaking so many rules. I told you. And this place looks nothing like the rest of the neighborhood. You have to do something." The board members exchanged a look. A quiet, almost awkward look. One of them finally spoke. "We appreciate your concern, but we're not seeing any violations here. The fence color is perfectly acceptable. The camera is pointed at the owner's property, not yours, and the lighting meets the community guidelines." "What? No. That can't be right. I checked the rule book. I know what it says." "And his camera is fine," they repeated. "Nothing wrong here." She looked stunned. "But I reported him." The board member cleared his throat gently. "We understand, but everything looks in order. Also, just so you know, he's not just a resident." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" The man gestured politely toward the owner. "He's the landlord for this section of the community." She froze. He watched her face. The way confusion slowly shifted to shock, then disbelief, then something else entirely, embarrassment. "Landlord?" she said, her voice almost cracking. No, that's not right. He can't be. He lives here like everyone else." "Yes," the board member replied kindly. "But he also owns the properties on this side of the neighborhood, including the one you're currently renting." Silence. Her mouth fell open a little, as if words had decided to abandon her completely. She turned toward him slowly, eyes wide. You're the landlord?" He nodded calmly. "I told you I handle things in this neighborhood." She stepped back slightly, her confidence crumbling right in front of him. Her voice came out softer now, without the sharpness from earlier. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you didn't ask," he said gently. "You assumed?" The HOA members nodded politely, said everything looked good, and thanked him before walking back toward their car. The neighbor stood there, completely quiet for once, looking like she'd been unplugged from her usual energy source. He didn't want to embarrass her more than she already felt, so he kept his tone kind. "You okay?" She swallowed hard. I didn't know." He nodded. "It's all right. But maybe next time, just talk to me first, before making reports or threats. It would make things easier for everyone." She looked down at the ground, her voice small. "I'm sorry. I thought I know," he said. "But now you know the truth." She nodded slowly and turned away, walking back toward her house much more quietly than she had approached. He watched her go, feeling a mix of sympathy and relief. The tension that had been hanging in the air all morning finally started to fade. But the situation wasn't over yet. The consequence of her actions wasn't something he had addressed yet. And the next step, the important step, was coming soon. He knew it, and deep down, she probably felt it too. And as the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard, he knew part 4 of the story was only the calm before the biggest reveal of all. The rest of the day moved slowly, as if the entire neighborhood was holding its breath after what had happened. The owner went back inside his home, trying to settle into a quiet routine, even though he knew things between him and the neighbor weren't truly settled yet. She had apologized, sort of, and she definitely looked embarrassed after learning he was the landlord. But the story wasn't finished. There was still one final conversation that needed to happen. A calm and honest talk that would shape how things moved forward. He spent the early evening tidying up the living room, folding some laundry and watching the late sunlight stretch across the floor. Every now and then, he would hear a door close or footsteps outside. He knew she was nearby, probably pacing or overthinking everything that had taken place. He didn't want the situation to end with awkward silence or lingering tension. That wasn't good for neighbors. It definitely wasn't good for a landlord and tenant relationship. So after dinner, he stepped out onto the porch. The air was cool and a little breezy, and the sky was turning shades of orange and purple. A peaceful moment. He looked over toward her house and saw the lights on inside. Shadows moved behind the curtains. She was home. He thought about knocking on her door, but didn't want to make her uncomfortable. Instead, he waited outside for a bit, leaning against the porch rail and giving her a chance to come out on her own terms. And eventually, she did. The sound of a door opening reached his ears. She stepped outside holding a mug of something warm. When she spotted him, she froze for a second, like she wasn't sure whether to go back inside or stay. But she picked staying. She walked slowly toward the edge of her porch, her shoulders round and her expression shy. She looked nothing like the loud, confident person she had been earlier that morning. "Hi," she said softly. He nodded. "Hi." A quiet moment passed between them. She looked down at her cup, then took a breath. "I'm really sorry about everything," she said. "I acted before thinking. I shouldn't have yelled at you, and I definitely shouldn't have reported you to the HOA. I guess I just—" She paused, searching for words. "I just felt like I had to control something, and I picked the wrong thing, and the wrong person." Her honesty was surprising, but he appreciated it. "It's okay," he said gently. "Everyone gets overwhelmed sometimes, but communication would have made things easier." She nodded quickly. "I know. I've had some tough experiences with past neighbors, people who really didn't care about others. They'd do things without thinking of the impact, and I guess I started assuming everyone was like that. You moved in quietly, and I didn't know anything about you. I felt like I had to be the one to keep the neighborhood in check." He understood that more than she realized. "That makes sense," he said. "But not everyone has bad intentions." "Yeah," she said with a small laugh. "I learned that in the most embarrassing way possible today." They both smiled faintly. She sighed and looked up at him again. "I still can't believe you're the landlord. I've been living here almost a year and nobody told me. It's not something I announce," he said. "I like keeping things simple. I take care of the properties, but I also live here like everyone else. I don't want people to treat me differently." "I get that. But I feel terrible. I made all these complaints about things that were actually fine, and you didn't even argue with me." "I didn't want to embarrass you," he said. "And I figured you were having a tough day. It happens." Another quiet moment passed. This one felt warmer, less awkward. "Well, thank you," she said, "for not yelling at me, and for not making things worse, and for being patient." He smiled. "You're welcome." She shifted on her porch step and took a slow sip from her mug. "So what happens now? I mean, with the landlord part. Are you going to? I don't know. Write something up about my behavior? Or file something?" He shook his head. "No, I don't need to do that." She blinked. "Really?" "Really. I'm not interested in punishing anyone. I just want the neighborhood to be peaceful. That's all." She looked relieved, so relieved that her shoulders actually dropped. "Thank you," she said. "I promise I won't be causing problems again. I actually want to be a good neighbor. And a good tenant? I mean that." "I believe you," he said honestly. She smiled a little, but it faded quickly as she seemed to remember something else. "But I do want to fix things," she said. "I made things stressful for you. I know an apology isn't enough. If there's anything I can do to make things right, just tell me. I'll do it." Thought for a moment. There was no anger inside him, no desire to make her feel worse. All he wanted was a calmer neighborhood and a normal relationship. "There's nothing big I need," he said, "but maybe we can start fresh. As neighbors, treat each other kindly. Communicate better. That's all." She nodded repeatedly. "Yes, Absolutely, I can do that. A soft breeze passed between them. She hesitated again, then asked quietly, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," he said. "Were you going to tell me you were the landlord before all this happened?" He chuckled lightly. "Probably at some point. It would have come up eventually." She let out a breath. "Well, I guess it came up in the most dramatic way possible," he laughed. "That's one way to put it." They stood there for a moment, both smiling, both relieved. Eventually, she stepped down from her porch and walked a little closer, stopping halfway between their houses. "Can we try this again?" she asked softly. "Hi, I'm your neighbor." She held out her hand. He shook it gently. "Nice to meet you." It felt like a real restart. After that, the conversation shifted naturally. They talked about everyday things like the quiet street, the best places to get groceries nearby, and small repairs she needed help with around her rental. Nothing dramatic, nothing tense, just two people finding common ground. As the sky finally grew dark, she said goodnight and walked back into her house, looking calmer than she had in days. He watched her go, feeling relieved too. The whole situation had taken so many turns. But at least it ended with understanding, not bitterness. He stepped back inside his own home and closed the door gently behind him. The house felt quiet and warm. He sat down for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened, how a simple misunderstanding had exploded into a huge problem, and how honesty had finally diffused it. There was something satisfying about the ending. Not dramatic revenge, not anger, just clarity, respect, and a bit of humility on both sides. And he knew the next time she felt overwhelmed or confused, she'd knock on his door instead of calling the HOA. The neighborhood felt peaceful again. Later that night, as he stood near the window looking out at the soft glow of porch lights, he realized the situation had taught both of them something important about assumptions and communication, and maybe, just maybe, it had made the community a little stronger. The story didn't end with shouting. It ended with understanding. A simple, human kind of ending, which was exactly the kind he preferred.